We're discovering how to make friends with our minds. And the important aspect of that is to realize there's four main functions. And when you understand them and how they work, then you can create this great relationship with your own mind. And with a great relationship with your mind, remember, it drives everything in your life. With that relationship, you move through life with so much more ease and grace. I'm Mark Bredner, founder of YogaCoach, and this is a channel for yoga teachers that want to transition from the studio to online, that want to step up in their teaching and want to be at the leading edge of how yoga moves into the future. So click on the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time we have a new video. These four functions of mind. It's funny because we're told that we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Somebody counted them, I don't know, but they counted them. Guess what most of those thoughts are, what most people focus on? Yep, they focus on what they don't want. Now we know that story, whatever you focus on, you get more of. So it's kind of weird, right? We focus on what we don't want, and we keep this repetitive cycle of a life that's not satisfying or fulfilling. What if we could change that? What if we could understand it in a very simple way, break it down into four simple steps so we could make friends with our minds and we could start to create the life that we wanted? Well, that's what we're going to have a chat about today. We're going to look at those four different functions. The first part of it is called Manus. That's the processing part of the mind. It's receiving information from the five senses, going to the spinal cord and up to the brain. And then the brain says, okay, cool, I've got this information, I've connected to that object or circumstance or person, and what do you want me to do with this information? Right? Because it doesn't decide or discriminate, it just says, what do you want me to do? So then it goes into the storehouse of where all of our impressions are, because every time you have an experience, you have a memory of that. It creates an impression. And it's all stored in the the chitta. So chitta is the field of awareness. And that field of awareness is like a massive, massive library or warehouse that files away all of these impressions. And when we engage with the world, certain impressions start to move, other ones are in place and others are neutral. But we're getting this movement or activity in the mind. We would call them vrittis, movements of mind. And different impressions, thoughts, beliefs, attitudes are more powerful than others. And what attributes power to the particular impression or thought is ahamkara. It's the I maker. It's what gives power or coloring to the particular thought that we're paying attention to. It can be strongly colored, it can be medium colored, it can be a little bit, it can be completely neutral. Like when we walk down the lane here, we have lots of trees. They don't create any ripples in the chitta. They're simply neutral. They're trees that we see every day, the cars that we pass by. But if I walk past one of the dogs down the corner who's a bit aggressive and he starts growling at me, then that starts to create an impression. Fear comes up. Adrenaline starts to happen based on being scared of a dog when I was a kid, right? And that's how it works. And then we have Buddhi. And Buddhi is the discerning, discriminating part of mind. And Buddhi is what you want to develop in your yoga. It's one of the most important practices to develop the discerning part. When we look at the 8 limbs of yoga, right, it's this process of working from gross to subtle, eventually coming into samadhi, recognizing the underlying unity of everything. But in the 8 limbs of yoga, the sutra beforehand says the whole reason to do this is developing viveka, to develop discernment and discrimination, to recognize what is me and what is not me. It's funny because we'll say, obviously, I'm not my relationship, right? My relationship, my partner is separate to me. I'm not my relationship. But then that person leaves you unexpectedly, and the next minute you're on the lounge eating buckets of ice cream, watching soapies, right? Or in fetal position crying. So we were very much identified with that particular object or person. It was you were identified with it. I'm not my computer. Of course I'm not my computer, it's a bit of metal. But if your life's work is on there and you haven't backed it up and someone steals it, I would be in fetal position, right? Because I'm very identified with that work, so I have it backed up multiple times. But I want you to get the idea, right? I'm not my money. But then people lose all their money and jump out of a window, right? That's extreme identification, right? So in the process of yoga, we're going gross to subtle, and we're setting aside all the things that I am not. And as you can set aside those things by developing Buddhi, discernment and discrimination, you start getting less impacted by life, getting pushed and pulled and disturbed by life. You move through life with much more ease and grace. So think about it like this metaphor. Okay, an employee receives some information that's urgent. So goes into the office to management, but all the CEOs and management are out on the golf course. But they're the ones that need to make the decision. So nobody's there. So they go onto the factory floor and they say, what do we do? What do we do? Then the person with the loudest voice, with the most authority, that's most powerful, that's most intimidating, gets their way. It may not be the right course of action, but they get their way. And that's what happens when we don't understand the process of mind. When Buddhi is not there, when we have a colored habit or pattern, which is called a samskara, that leads us to do the same action. In an unconscious life, that action reinforces the habit and samskara. Right? It becomes more strongly colored. Path of least resistance, same action, same habit, same action, same habit. So we want to develop Buddhi so that we can go, hang on a sec, this is not useful. This is a super powerful practice. Very simple. Ask the question, is it useful or not? And if it's not useful, why do we do it? Because oftentimes we say to ourselves, no, this is not useful. Right? Eating this fried food, smoking this cigarette, getting into this argument, it's not useful. But I do it anyway. Right? Why? Because ahamkara, the identity to that particular impression, is so strong. It's strongly colored. And emotion always overpowers the thought process until we can make the practices more powerful than the resistance. So that's why practice is really important. So bit by bit, we get to the place where we don't pick up the cigarette. Right? It's uncomfortable. We get all the stuff jumping around in the mind telling you to do this thing, and we go, no. Buddhi says no. Right? It's like you get the devil and the angel on your shoulder. Right? The habit saying, have the ciggy. You and I, we've been friends for many years. You love me, I make you feel good. Right? Have it. And then Buddhi's sitting there going, you know this doesn't end well. Right? This is not a good thing. You don't want to do this. But then next minute, you've got the cigarette there. Okay? Ahamkara is still more powerful. But we keep with the Buddhi practice. We keep with it and keep with it. And we last a little bit longer. We go a little bit longer. We go a little bit longer. Eventually, that particular object doesn't create a disturbance anymore. And I'm not identified with it. We put it aside. Right? I don't identify as a cigarette smoker. I don't identify with cigarettes. Nothing happens. I see one, nothing happens. This is what happens in our life, in the whole process of receiving information. What do I do with it? We go into the storehouse. Based on our past and our memory, we'll have impressions that arise. If it's not useful for us, we want to bring in Buddhi to say, no, let's go down a different pathway. And by, as we do that, we make more wise choices. We move through life with more ease and grace. We become more effective. We impact the world in a better way. So when we receive that information, it's called through the afferent nervous system, it's an effect. And then once Buddhi is strong, then the efferent nervous system, the effect on how we engage with the world becomes much more empowering. And that's how we make friends with our minds. Okay? We need to develop Buddhi. And simple again, but so powerful, keep asking yourself, is this useful or not? And if you say no, but you go ahead and do the thing, then simply you know that the emotion attached to that particular object, personal thing, is still too powerful and it overrides the wisdom of Buddhi. Simple, we understand. Simple process. So keep strengthening Buddhi. Do the Ishtakriya. Do your practices. Do the things that strengthen mind. And keep moving in the direction of what's most useful in your life, so then you can be most useful to the people in your life. Okay. So if you like the video, please subscribe. It helps us a little bit. Like and share. And we'll see you on the next video. One-handed namaste, shaka, peace.